morning. My name is Barbara Brown, and I'm from Winslow Campus of Care. We're located in the Four Corners in northern Arizona, and we border the Navajo Reservation. My father founded our company over 40 years ago, and one day he told me that after over 25 years in the business, in this community, he never really felt like he fit in. He said the Navajo people are different, and that as the son of a Methodist minister, he saw and he heard things that were quite disturbing to him. When I was asked to serve as the interim administrator for a few weeks, I completely underestimated how challenging this was going to be without speaking a single word of their ancient language. I was told that none of the residents spoke English. I learned later that most of them did. It's just not something they were willing to share with me yet. I learned a few important words. Shema means grandmother or cherished woman of the people. Ahyehe means thank you, or I humbly receive your gift. Bilagana means me and most of you. We're not Navajos. We're not members of the tribe. And finally, Natane means boss lady or respected leader. There's no word in the Navajo language for death. It just does not translate. It's considered very, very bad luck to even suggest or refer to death with the Navajo. On my second day in the facility, I instructed the admissions staff to redirect a new admission to a recently vacated semi-private room instead of an empty room. Within a half an hour of her admission, the patient's granddaughter was in my office, and she said, "My mother is very traditional. She's old-fashioned. And when the staff told her that a lady died in that bed 2 days ago, she doesn't feel safe staying there. It's just the way the old people feel." We immediately changed Sarah to the original accommodation, and as I was walking down the hall, I came across a small group of staff, and I asked them, who told the new lady about the recent death and why? They hung their heads, shrugged their shoulders, and no one would make eye contact with me. But as I walked away, I heard somebody whisper, "Bilagana Natane." Later that afternoon, one of our senior nurses came to my office, and she took great sympathy to my ignorance of the Navajo culture. She gently explained to me that the Navajos believe when a soul is making its final journey, it requires 3 days to collect itself, and that must be in private. If anyone interferes with that process, he or his entire family may be haunted by the ghost of that spirit forever. It's considered very dangerous. Well, then who told her, and why would they tell her such a thing? She looked me straight in the eye, and she said, "We all told her, because it's our responsibility to protect our shamas from you." What I learned that day was that it cost me $500.88 to maintain a semi-private accommodation for 3 days. But more importantly, if my residents and my staff feel safe and respected, it was priceless. Our brochures needed updating, and I quickly learned that many Navajo people are very superstitious about having their photographs taken. They believe that the image could steal their soul. So after much discussion, it was decided that it would be safe to photograph hands. The day of the photo shoot, all the ladies were dressed in their finery, and at the end of the day, Jenny Rock was declared Miss Beautiful Hands, Winslow Campus of Care. When the brochures arrived, we had a signing ceremony, and all those that were included were celebrated. It was a wonderful day. Many, many, many months later, I glanced into the parking lot, and I saw Jenny sitting by our transport van with a group of people. And this was quite curious because Jenny rarely had visitors. As I approached the group, Jenny said, Natane, please come. Meet my family. I haven't seen them in over 5 years, and they just can't believe that I won this contest and that these are my hands. There are her hands. I've verified that, in fact, Jenny had won a very prestigious contest and that those were the most beautiful hands at Winslow Campus of Care. Later that afternoon, after her family had gone, Jenny came to my office. And with some emotion, she said to me, "My family has always called me Nolly. Nolly means granny, grandma. But never before have they called me Shema. Not before today. Today, they're finally proud of me." Our vending machine company in October of 2007 raised its prices by 5 cents per item. Now that's an exorbitant amount for our residents on a fixed income, so they decided to boycott the machines. Right, they were going to rely on their family and friends to do their shopping at Walmart. Sadly, that plan was an epic fail. No surprise, right? So in January of '08, the resident council received an anonymous check for $400 and a letter encouraging them to open up their own store in a small vacant space. 3 residents and the activity director made the trip to Flagstaff to Sam's Club and purchased their first inventory, and they haven't looked back since. They created a kindness program to gift residents without resources. Since 2012, they have sponsored 16 children for cleft palate surgery. And last year, they sponsored a CNA to go to Washington, D.C. to attend the NACA conference with Lori Porter. Susie had never been on an airplane before, but when she came home, she told us that 2 of the most important things she learned in Washington is that she was not just a CNA. She was a healthcare professional, and that she was also a proud American. We've been featured in Provider Magazine. We've been featured by ABC News, and in 2015, our program won the Sustainable Program Award through the Arizona Nursing Home Association. Friday, when I left the facility, the savings account for the Trading Post had well over $4,000. The Trading Post is 100% owned and operated by the residents. They do the scheduling, they do the purchasing, hiring, firing, all of it. They might even host the resident council for 100 milkshakes from McDonald's. The takeaway from this story is that when I gave the residents a tiny little space, I thought they were going to solve a tiny little problem. I had no expectations at all. But what I realized was, given half the chance, our residents would change the world. I have to laugh. I love this one. Like many Native American cultures, the Navajos have some very descriptive names. Mary Many Goats, John Big Horse, or David Laughing Eyes are all friends I have known. But when I saw this name, I have to admit I was pretty intrigued. Sheep herder, big cigar. I asked around about him, and I was told that he was a very cantankerous old man, but he really likes your dog. When I knocked on his door, he peeked out, and as soon as he saw the dog, he welcomed me in. I introduced myself, and he said, "I know who you are. You're the Bilagana who asked too many questions." Yep, and I'm here to ask another question. I'd love to learn the story of your name. He gestured for me to sit down in his wheelchair, but not before taking the dog from my arms. He explained to me, there he is. He explained to me that his mother had never been well, that his father had to herd the sheep, which was not customary in a Navajo home. His dad fell asleep out in the pasture, and he dreamt that his herd multiplied right before his eyes as he smoked a big cigar that never disappeared. When he told his wife the story, she laughed, of course. But after the story reoccurred many, many, many times, they chose to accept it as a sign, and a blessing of prosperity. When their only child was born, it came as no surprise to anyone in the tribe that they named him Big Cigar Sheepherder. What if it had been a girl? I don't know. I don't know. So I said to him, well, so how do I properly address you? Are you Mr. Sheepherder or are you Mr. Big? He sort of scratched his chin and he said, you know, people have been laughing at my name my whole life, but no one ever before has asked me what I want to be called. He said, some of the girls here call me Big C. I kind of like that. He said, you can call me Big C. I was proud to call Big C my friend for many, many years, and that's Sophia there, a little 3 pounds of fluff. But one day when the hospice nurse came to my office, she said, I just met Mr. Sheepherder. And when I asked him to tell me the story of his name, he was just too tired. But he said that his friend, the Bilagana Natani, had his permission to tell her his story. This picture hangs in our facility, and we won a photo contest. And obviously, I think of Big C and Sophia fondly every time I see it. Oh my. Thanksgiving Day. Have you ever felt that way? Thanksgiving Day. As I made my way to the dining room, the aroma of turkey and stuffing and gravy was just so comforting to me. And as I made my way through the dining room, I went from table to table, and I asked a gentleman, how is your meal? He said, it's okay. I made my way to another table, and a group of gentlemen said, it's fine. And at a third table, a lady said to me, I like turkey, it's good. Now, I don't know about any of you, but if anyone of my family told me that our Thanksgiving feast was fine, I would be heartbroken and mortified. So I went into the kitchen and I told the staff what I had heard. And I said, what are we missing? What's wrong? And they whispered quietly amongst themselves a bit, and they said, it's Bilagana food. It's not our food. So the following Monday, I met with Jonathan, the food service manager, and I asked him to describe a Navajo feast to me. And he said, oh, it's wonderful. We butcher a sheep, and then we carve it, and we cook all day. Oh, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. And I said, well, can we do that here? He said, absolutely not. We cannot butcher a live animal in the city limits. No. But then he said to me, we can buy a carcass. Oh. So the day before Christmas, the activity director promised a big event in the dining room. Of course, we were all expecting Santa Claus, right? When Jonathan and his team came out of the kitchen with an 80-pound sheep carcass, there were gasps and giggles. Have you ever seen a trapeze used like that before? Just saying. When we hoisted the carcass up onto the trapeze, Jonathan wielded this medieval-looking knife. And as he explained, in Navajo, this knife had been his grandfather's and his grandfather's before him. And with each surgical cut, he explained that this is how he had been taught and that how he was teaching his son. That day, the meat cooked slowly, the mutton stew simmered in the kitchen, and the blue corn mush and fried bread were being prepared. Christmas Day, I came to the dining room, and it was an unfamiliar smell. But when I entered the room, the feeling of joy was contagious. As I approached one gentleman, he couldn't even be distracted from his meal to speak to me. When I went to the next table, a lady said through an interpreter, my mother never made anything this good. And finally, at the third table, the president of the resident council patted my hand. And he said, this is the best meal we've ever had, Natani, ahiehe. In closing, what I'd like to share with you is that when I went to Winslow Campus of Care 12 years ago, I had no intention of changing anything. We had been in business over 30 years, and we were doing just fine. What I learned was that in Winslow, Arizona, it's not the Navajo people that are different, it was me that was different. And that if I was going to learn to honor and respect their culture, it was me who was going to have to accept their gift of knowledge and wisdom of their sacred ways. Ahyehe.